Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and day 22. Yes, day 22 of the August Alphabet Challenge that I'm doing to raise funds to build a women's refuge over in Zambia. We're on to the letter V, and I've chosen, well, I've not chosen you, have you voted for it? You chose the 2017 Korean film The Villainess. This is directed by Jung Byung-gil and it stars Kim Ok-vin. Now, I'm not going to try and pronounce any of the other names of the actors in this film because they're all Korean and quite frankly, I'll end up looking like a knob. Wow, what can I say? This film was crazy. So, yeah, think Hardcore Henry meets Old Boy meets La Femme Nikita. We've seen this kind of idea many times now. A woman gets taken in, turned into an assassin, blah, 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 whatever. Who cares? It's the action that you care about. Although that has been a little bit unfair because there is actually a fairly decent story to this. Yes, it does have tropes. Yes, it does have a lot of things we've seen in films before, such as La Femme Nikita. But it does have a very anchored story, I would say, in that while all the action around it is totally bonkers, off the wall, just nut stuff. Like I say, think Hardcore Henry, the way that's shot. That's really larger than life. It still has a very human story at its centre about a woman who is literally just trying to provide the best life for her child, but she's stuck in this situation where everybody else is controlling her life. I cared about the character, so this central character, this woman who, she has a child whilst she's in this agency that are training her to be an assassin. It's one of the thing. Well, it's the thing that kind of gets them to get her to work for them. She turns out she's pregnant, and they say, "Well, look, you have to stay with us and become an assassin, and then you get to stay with your child, or you keep fighting and you die." So she stays. So it's really all about the preservation of her child, and it's a human story. But it all just happens to take place within the midst of all this crazy martial arts, big action sequences, car chases, shootouts, all that kind of stuff that is just amazingly fun and highly entertaining, it's got to be said, and brutal, it's got to be said as well. The fight sequences in this are incredibly brutal. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore. The opening sequence, because we're straight into it, it's got to be said. Literally, the opening sequence, which is kind of shown from our main character's POV. Again, like I say, Hardcore Henry, if you think the way all of that movie was shot from the POV of the main character, opening sequence of this film is the same. It's like this 10-minute kind of super long action sequence in which she just goes into this building and nails a bunch of gangsters with all manner of weapons. Like I say, because we're seeing what she sees, we're seeing everything. We see every person she takes out in full-blooded, gory detail, and it's just so over the top, so ridiculous that it's fun. It induces an adrenaline rush. It's got to be said. For any action sequence in this film induces an adrenaline rush. There's a lot of John Wick in here as well. It's got to be said. Particularly John Wick Chapter 3. You think the sequence on the bikes in John Wick 3. There's a sequence like that here where the camera's just like with them on the bikes as they're fighting. Yeah, like I say, proper reminded me of John Wick 3. Although John Wick 3 came after this. So there you go. Now, my only negative really for this film is well, I've got a couple, very minor, must be said. The first one is that some of the drama can get, and probably because of the music, I think, and I find this a lot with Asian cinema, is that when we get into more emotional bits, the music almost hinders it in the sense that it becomes a bit like a soap opera sometimes with Asian cinema. When they go for the emotional bits, they tell you with the music in a really obvious way. I've come to expect that now, to be honest. But so it's not, like I say, very minor criticism. The other criticism, if you can call it that, it's not really a criticism. It's nothing that can be helped. And I'm going to sound like a proper racist right now, but they all look the same. I'm sorry. I know that's a ridiculous comment. But because I don't know these actors, they're all dark haired and they're all. I'm sorry, they all look the same. I sound super racist, but it's not helped by the fact that a lot of this film is told in flashback and it keeps on jumping backwards and forwards. So you get these characters or these actors that are pretty hard for me, a Westerner, to distinguish between to begin with. But then when you jump to the flashback, they change their hairstyle or whatever, just a little bit. And I'm kind of like, who's that now? Who are we again? And obviously, again, the names, it's, if these were Western names, I'd have a much easier time kind of keeping up with them. But yeah, that's sort of like, it's not a criticism, because if I was Korean, I'd probably have a much better ability to distinguish between who I'm seeing on screen. But at the risk of sounding totally ignorant, totally racist, part of the problem for me was that I couldn't tell a lot of these actors apart. But yeah, I managed. I just about managed. It didn't hinder my enjoyment of the film. Like I say, if you just want a balls to the wall action film with some decent characters that you can root for, and you want it to go places where perhaps Western cinema wouldn't. Like I say, there's certain things they do to this character where I can imagine if it was a Western movie, there's this particular thing. I'm trying not to spoil anything here, but there's particular things that happen where if this was a Western film, they wouldn't happen because they'd need it to be a bit happier. They need it to be, yeah. Whereas here, they're willing to go places that I think Western cinema often isn't, and I commend it for that. So yeah, it raises the stakes, and it means that the emotional investment that is tied up in it has a bit more impact because things are real, consequences are real, and things like that. So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a really great action film. I think it will probably be more rewarding for me on a repeat viewing now that I know what the story is and who the characters are. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think if you're really into your action cinema, this is a must watch. Really great film. The Villainess. 4.5 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Have you seen it? And if so, what did you think about it? Leave your comments down below. Do check out those links for the August Alphabet Challenge in the description box as well. And until tomorrow, cracking.